And we are live. Guys, welcome to the Let's Talk Fishing video podcast Thursday edition. I'm very excited about this because I get to introduce to my viewers the boys from the Deck Talk podcast. And I have both of them on here tonight. And we're going to talk about the Deck Talk podcast. I have both Colin Burnett and Norman Lee. How are you guys doing?
Man,
What's up, Jay, man?
Jay, we are living the dream, is what we like to say. We just now slid off of our podcast and slid right into here. And as long as we get to talk to somebody about fishing and just be able to expand our umbrella, I would say, of friends and stuff that we get to make, and it's definitely an honor to be on here with you and talk to you. So, how about yourself?
That's fantastic, man. I'm glad to be able to talk to both of you guys at the same time. I've heard a lot about your podcast. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. We already have our first comment here from a very good friend of mine, a very good friend of Let's Talk Fishing podcast, Cajun Rob Fishing. He's from Pearl River, Louisiana. Now he lives in southern Kentucky. Fishes a lot as a co-angler. Cajun Rob, how you doing tonight, Cajun Rob? He said, good evening, hammers.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
All right. So Colin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I got to talk to Norm last night.
Yeah. So I originally grew up in Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
Grew up on Old Hickory Lake, and I say grew up, I mean, we were a little less than a mile away. And so I was able to sneak away and ride my bike to the lake and fish a lot. But I really got my fishing genes from my dad and my mom's dad, my granddaddy. We would go out in the boat and just started out like catching panfish like bluegill and crappie and stuff like that. As I got older, I watching some of the bass masters on TV. I was like, I want to catch a bass. So my granddaddy, he always we grew up like everything we caught, we ate. And so, in which I know like a lot of the people that are our age and older and stuff like that, that's how they grew up, is everything that was on the hook got in the grease. And so, with that, I got to get my granddaddy to go take me out or take us out and do some bass fishing. And once I caught that first bass, I mean, I was just hooked. It was something. I mean, my granddaddy we were on Old Hickory, but he had a camp that he had on Kentucky Lake. So I was able to fish Old Hickory, Percy Priest in the Nashville area, and then fish Kentucky Lake. And so I really got my feet wet fishing those three. And then in 99, we moved to Chattanooga. And at that time, I really didn't know too terribly much about Chickamauga. And I didn't fish too much because I had baseball going on with high school. And then so I just with playing sports, I was just too busy. Then I got into golf, and then I finally got back into fishing tournaments, doing little dog fights, and then fishing some Saturday tournaments, and that's just in the competitive drive that it's in us all, that's fishing and stuff. I mean, once you get in that tournament atmosphere, it's very contagious. And so,
yes.
But I done that. I haven't fished. Norman and I fished a couple tournaments here this past year, but since I've started my YouTube and Norman and I've started the podcast, I've really kind of stepped away from the tournament scene just because it's just so busy with the YouTube, the production company, the podcast, and then the making jigs and stuff. We really don't have time. And then I have my real job is working for McKee Foods, which we deliver Little Debbie's, and so I really don't have time to fish a tournament, and but the love of fishing in a tournament, and if I can get into one, I definitely would try to get into it. But that's really kind of how I got into fishing, was mainly through my dad and my granddaddy just taking me out growing up, and you get the bug and it sticks with you.
That's exactly how I got into this
Yeah.
whole fishing obsession, as I like to call it. So, Norm, how did you two meet, and when did you decide that you wanted to start a podcast?
Kind of a pretty, I guess you'd say, cool story how me and Colin met. We just got up here. We've probably been here for, I don't know, maybe 8 months, living here permanently in Tennessee. And we brought everything with us from Florida. When we moved from Florida, we actually had 2 houses. We had a lot of stuff. We're consolidating from bigger stuff in Florida to getting up here. So we had a lot of stuff that we basically hadn't room for. So wife having a yard sale, trying to get rid of some of the stuff we brought up. And Colin's dad came to the yard sale. That's where I first met Colin's dad. Well, my garage was so full where my boat is now that my boat was out in the driveway. Well, of course, Colin's dad walked down. I was out doing something with the boat. I don't know what I was doing, but Colin's dad walked down and started talking to me and said, I have a son that loves to fish. He fishes tournaments. He's always out on the water. I said, oh, okay. He said, maybe you guys can meet and get to know each other. I said, yeah, that'd be awesome. Because at that point, I didn't know anybody. I mean, I was basically had no clue who anybody was up here. And Colin gives me a call, I guess, what was it, about a week later?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And of course, I told Colin's dad, that I was a guide, and I'm guiding up here too as well. I wasn't guiding as much at that time because I was still actually on the water trying to process and trying to really fine tune my craft up here coming from Florida. So I wasn't actually at that time booking a lot of trips. I was still spending a lot of time on the water. But Colin calls me up, and Colin actually books a trip with me the first time we met. Because Colin wanted to kind of fine tune his craft deep water fishing offshore. Yeah. So that's kind of how we first met. Colin actually booked a trip with me, and kind of our friendship just grew from there, man. And we just started going fishing together every chance we had. And then the different avenues opened up with what we're doing today with the production company and the Deck Talk podcast. And like Colin said, and we talked a little bit about it yesterday on your podcast, Jay. We're started a Chat Down Custom Lures now, so we're doing that. So it, meeting Colin, he's the best person you'd ever can know. Give the shirt off of his back if you needed it. Love him to death, and we've had a really good relationship since we first met. So.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another comment from the audience. It's Charles Anderson. Charles Anderson is a good friend of mine. I've been fishing with him several times. He lives in a place called Vidalia, Louisiana, which is just the coolest place. There's oxbow lakes everywhere around Charles's house, guys. I mean, I've been there and fished probably 5 or 6 of the lakes. And you can fish shallow, you can fish deep, you can fish docks, you can fish weeds, you can fish drop-offs.
Man.
So much fun. I've been there and fished with Charles, always have a good time fishing with Charles, and Charles says, let's go bassing. And of course, in Southern Louisiana style, he spelled Gaux, which is a very Cajun way to do that. Charles, man, thank you very much for tuning in. I love it when you guys tune in, particularly people who I fished with. I had Charles on my podcast, and actually Charles made good on his promise to take me fishing, because I told him, don't invite me to go fishing unless you want me to come knocking on your door at 5 o'clock in the morning.
That's right. Yeah, that is true.
The kind of guy I am. I'm sure you guys are both the same way. I know Norm. I know our good friend Eric Evans from iBass 360 has fished with you. Maybe both of you guys.
Yeah. When Eric comes up, we both actually get out on the boat with Eric.
Yeah.
And let me guess, you go for smallmouths.
The last, I think the last couple times he came out and fished with us, we went to Nickajack, so I think we caught I think we caught all three. I think we caught largemouth.
Yeah, we got largemouth, spotted bass, and smallmouth.
Yeah.
And I made the mistake the last time, Jay, that he came because I had went to a lake that we call Lake X, and because it has some tanks in it, and like I've gone there, and my biggest 3 fish bag that I caught was 23 pounds,
Jeez.
um, and I lost one at the boat that was 10 plus, and um, I won't. Well, I won't go into how I
We'll go into
lost.
that story.
Huh?
It happens.
Well,
It happens.
but I ended up losing it. So, but it still made my biggest bag of 23 pounds. But I had
Wow.
went the day before or 2 days before Eric was supposed to come up, and I was throwing a buzz bait, and I had one over 7 that I caught, and I had one that I seen that I would say was pushing 8 to 9 pounds, and so I called Eric and Norman up, and I said, "Man, I just went to Lake X. We got to go back out."
Yeah.
And hit the lake. And it was 2 days before because I went to work in South, and I had to go to South Carolina. It did not rain in South Carolina, but it rained in Chattanooga, and it made a difference. The water was muddy. We only caught one
Oh.
fish in about 5 hours, and I mean there was nothing going on.
Yeah,
And
he called me up like, excuse me, excuse me. He called me up like the day before. I don't know, it was 2 days before, the day before, and he says, "Man, he says, you think we should call Eric and change and let him know, go to Lake X, or we call it Lake X anyway."
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, I don't care where we go as long as we're on the water." So that's kind of what we done, and I guess to kind of finish Colin's story, we ended up fishing till about noon, Colin.
till noon, yeah.
Noon,
And then drove an hour back to Nickajack and slayed them after we got to Nickajack.
We made the decision to pull the plug on Lake X. We went back to Nickajack. So we would have had a lot better day. But hey, you know what? We took the chance on catching a few big ones, and it just didn't happen. So we could have went to Lake X just as well and caught some big ones. So you never know.
Well, that's different, man. It's always a gamble.
That is.
That's just fishing. That doesn't surprise me at all. And also fish are camera shy. I know that.
Yeah. That's true. That is true.
we always tell them, come on, just we'll make a star out of you, take a couple pictures of you, and put you right back.
Yeah, they don't. No.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of filming for different television shows, and it's great. A lot of those television shows, I'm not going to name names. They say, make sure that your live well is full when you show up in the morning.
Yeah, I know a few of them that's like that.
Well, but the production time is expensive. I get it. Yeah. It's a business. It's a business. But okay. So let's talk about Deck Talk. When can a guy see Deck Talk, guys? One of you.
Well, if you want to watch it live, we go every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. Okay. So, which is because it is because I think y'all are an hour behind us because
it's 6:45 here right now.
Yes. So we go live. And the reason we go live is kind of like how you do, to where you have your viewers can be interactive. Like last week we had Mike Iaconelli on, and so a lot of people that's not in the industry like how we are, they don't get the chance to go and talk to Mike Iaconelli. So this is when we were talking about the podcast. Norman and I were wanting to be able to allow our viewers to be able to interact with our guests as much as possible. And so that's the reason why we do a live, and then we'll put it on it's on every podcast platform. If you just want to listen to the audio, We are on every podcast platform.
Okay.
But
Very
the
good.
live part is Norman Lee's Facebook and YouTube, and then Deck Talk Podcast on YouTube, and then it's on my YouTube and my Facebook page.
Okay, and guys, also if you want to find it, it's also at links on iBass 360
Yes.
Facebook page and ibass360.com.
Yes, and they and we're trying to work with them to where we can link that up live with them. We're trying to see if we can get it to where it links in live with the iBass.
Wow.
So,
if you figure out how to do that, let me know.
Oh, we definitely will. That's what it's all about. I mean, we're here to, and how we look at it is like we want to help out other people. I mean, we want to, that's how we grow, you grow, is how we look at it. And that's, and we've been so blessed, Jay, to, like, we just got our numbers in we've been doing the podcast for 8 months, and we should have already now, but when we looked at it here at the beginning of the week, we were at 1.4, almost 1.5 million views on the podcast.
Very good, guys.
So
very, very, very. That's one thing I don't like.
That's on one episode too. That's our highest viewed episode.
You know, Facebook Facebook only goes back 1 month to give you how many views you've gotten.
Yeah. So,
you know, well, that's really awesome, guys.
Yeah.
You know, you should be proud of yourself because it's not easy to get people to commit to a 45-minute. Of course, you guys just did an hour and 20 minutes podcast. You know,
yes, and
it's
sometimes like we try to. Sorry about that, Jay.
No problem. Go ahead, man.
We tell people it's an hour long, but I think out of the 35 episodes that we've done, Jay, I think only 2 of them has been at an hour. Most of them about an hour and 15 minutes. And it's like we had today we had Jen and Dustin Muse, which are good friends of ours. They're from Nebraska. We had them on, and like we had over 1,100 viewers today.
Just watching live.
So I mean, and that's one thing. Like when Norman and I were talking Saturday about you, we're like, man, we want to get in, and we didn't know how big of a podcast that you have, but we were like, we need to get with Jay. We need to be able to work to where we can use, both of us can use each other to be able to grow each platform.
I agree. And you know, I talked to both Rob and Eric about you guys. You guys came highly recommended. So I really wanted to get with you guys. And, you know, and I like to work with other podcasters.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 4 years. It's not easy, guys.
No,
you guys being on so many platforms really, really, really helps your numbers.
Yeah, and
I'm not on that many platforms. I usually get about 500. You know,
right. So, and that is good though. I mean, because just being on just Facebook, that is very well.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Colin, this is a fishing show.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to hear. You know, I asked Norman this last night, and man, he gave us a very, very, very detailed account about how he uses his 14.5-inch snakes. I mean plastic worms.
It looks like a snake.
You gotta say it right. Duh.
Very nasty. You gotta emphasize on the duh.
I'm still laughing about that.
Yeah.
What is your favorite presentation, Colin?
I grew up beating the banks, and my dad's dad was a VP for Genesco Shoe Company, which was one of the biggest shoe companies in the world.
Okay.
And he had went to Texas and got to fish Fork or Rayburn, one of the two, and he took a guide out, and so the guy taught him a Texas rig, and it was a purple worm. So I grew up fishing a Texas rig and something purple. I guarantee you, I've got more purple stuff in my boat than anybody has ever seen.
Like
And
every other bass fisherman back in the 70s did the same thing, and we all caught fish.
that's it. That's it. And so
That excites me.
everybody trying to throw these wild colors, and I just go with the purple, and you cannot go wrong. I'll throw a crawl on there. Actually, right here,
purple was the
I
only
had one of our companies make this
Ooh, look at
purple
that.
smoked purple crawl.
Yeah.
And I tell you, and I dip. The thing is, on what I do with the crawl, that I do different than anybody else. Most people just go and say, I even where I cut it off is a Texas rig, but I will dip this in chartreuse JJ's Magic. JJ's Magic to me has been the best dye that I have been able to find.
Can you tell me who makes that particular piece of soft plastic? Yeah.
This was actually from a local guy that
you see? I found this in the bottom of my tackle box. It looks exactly like, I mean, it even has that
like the exact same mold. This was
it has that same groove and everything. I think this is a Zoom thing. I just found it it's one of those mystery baits, Norman. I'm sure you have those. You find these in the bottom of your your tackle well in your boat, or in the bottom of your tackle bag if you're a co-angler. And I've been showing this, and I'm like, what the heck is this? I think it's a Zoom.
Yeah, and I agree with you that it is. I mean, because the person that I had make that, I took in a smoke purple rage tail.
Ooh, nice.
And I told him I wanted him to match that color, and he matched it as close as I've seen somebody match it. And but that is money when you dip it into. I'll even like dip the tail of the Cinco down into it just to kind of give it that little bit of difference. But that is definitely money, and that is my go-to. I always have. Norman will have the Carolina rig tied up, and he'll have a zero spook tied on his boat at all times. I will always have a Texas rig tied on, because if I need to go catch the fish, that's what I'm using.
You know, I always have some kind of Texas rig tied on. I always have a wacky rig. Usually it's some variant of the 48.
Yeah.
You know, missile baits. I have been wacky rigging since 1997 when we only had the Zoom trick worms.
Yeah. Right.
And then, of course, the Bass Pro Shop Sticko. Then, of course, the Senko came out and changed everything with wacky rigging. But enough of me. I want to talk to you guys, you know. But, you know, I like my soft plastics. And, man, Norm and I were talking about this last night. I love Carolina rigging, but it'll take me 10 minutes to bring it in. Pre-spawn, you know, you find that creek bed where, you know, bass are fun, or the big girls are funneling in to go out to meet the boys in the shallow water. Just barely move, just barely twitch that thing. That thing's just sitting down there quivering, and you know it's way up like this because Norm explained that beautifully last night. That if you're
he done.
It's just, but man, I've also caught fish doing that power fishing with it too. But I'm just talking, you know, like you know, 50 degrees up north, you know.
Right. And so Norman last night he killed it. I was able to watch that last night, or I wasn't able to watch it last night. I actually watched it on my way back, or actually listened to it. But how he described what the Carolina rig is or does was phenomenal. I mean, it was spot on. And I tell people that if you want to learn something about a spook or a Carolina rig, Norman is the guy to ask, because a lot of people the Carolina rig kind of went away, and it's starting to kind of get back, like, as a tool for people to use. And but Norman, if y'all did not see that, y'all need to check that out last night with what he done. That was phenomenal.
I got a question for you, Norm. With an 8 foot long, I'm sure I with a 7 foot long leader, and your sinker pegged up there 7 feet.
Well, you don't now. Here's the thing, though. You don't on a
Yeah.
Carolina. You don't peg your sinker. You do
Okay,
not peg it.
that's one thing I'm doing wrong. Thank you for
Yeah.
telling me
Your
that.
sinker. That's part of the way Carolina rig works. What you have with the sinker now, with today's tungsten. Back in the day, it was basically a lead or brass weight that used.
Yeah, lead usually. Yeah,
And everybody was using like the glass beads, stuff like that. But what you get with a lead or a brass weight against the bead is you get, when it's clanking back and forth, you're getting a clunk, clunk. You're getting a clunk sound. Okay. One of the ways the Carolina rig works is not only the disturbance that the weight is going to make as it's bouncing along the bottom that attracts the fish to your rig, but the other thing is when it bangs on rocks, it bangs on bottom, whatever it's banging against, you want that weight free floating back and forth against the bead. That's what I was telling you with the tungsten now. With Bruiser Bait came up with that barrel weight that I actually use to imitate the bead, because you can't use a glass bead anymore with tungsten because of the glass, because of the density of the tungsten material. So now you got tungsten against tungsten. So the noise you're getting now with that, with your weight going back and forth, and again, if it was pegged, you're not going to get the noise factor. That's one of the ways it works, is you want that clanking sound between that, banging around on bottom. That's one of the things that's going to attract the fish to the rig itself. But you're going to get more of a ping versus a clunk, and of course a ping is more attractive sound to the fish on the bottom than the clunk's going to be with your tungsten pinging against tungsten. But I know what you're getting at. How do you cast a 7-foot leader?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to.
Very, very simple, very easy. I could actually cast a 7-foot leader every bit as far as most people could actually cast a zero.
Every bit as accurately?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's good.
Okay.
The key to casting Carolina rig with a 7-foot leader, most people, when they bring it over their shoulder to cast, like a Texas rig, the line's actually going to buckle behind them when they go to make the throw. Okay. Yeah. That's the one thing you want to keep from doing. When you put that Carolina rig over your shoulder to cast it, don't let that leader buckle on your backswing. You want to more or less do a sweeping motion. And as you sweep it out. So what's happening now is that leader is keeping extended tight from your weight to your barrel to your swivel all the way down your fluorocarbon leader. There's no buckling in that leader line, because you're actually, with the sweeping motion, you're keeping that leader nice and extended all the way through your backswing. As long as you don't buckle your leader behind you. Now, if you buckle the leader, you're going to have the biggest bird's nest you'd ever seen. If you let it buckle, keep it extended. Don't let that leader buckle behind you, and more of a sweeping motion versus a throwing motion.
Now,
so if you do that, you're going to be able to cast that 7-foot leader every bit as you could cast an 18-inch leader, or any Texas rig you're going to throw, any zero spook you're going to have tied on. And as time goes on and you practice it, you'll be just as accurate doing it as well.
Yeah. Now, Jay, I'll do like what you were saying about pegging it, because what I'll do is I'll put a stopper on like 2 stoppers on the top of my Texas rig, and then 2 on the bottom. And like if let's say I'm fishing like a flat, like a shell bed or something like that.
Yeah.
I will, and I do that to where I can slide it up. It's a quiet Carolina rig. I will do that to where it saves me from having to tie up a Carolina rig, just to kind of see if I'm going to get a bite. I will do like what you were saying on that.
And see, what Colin's talking about too is there's different modifications you could do. That's kind of a modified Carolina rig, where you're not using a bead, you're not using a swivel. Basically, all you're doing is pegging your weight above where your bait's going to be. A lot of times now, when you get in certain situations, certain bottoms, certain areas, the fish might not want a lot of noise. That's a good technique to use when that situation arises. Or that technique is also used well when you're throwing a finesse Carolina rig. If you're a lot of times when you're fishing for smallmouth, you're not going to be power fishing like I throw the 14.25 big nasties.
Yeah.
So when you're Carolina rigging for smallmouth, you're downsizing a lot smaller baits, using more of a downsized finesse type Carolina rig. Well, if you do that, you might not want to use that swivel. You're not going to definitely not using a bigger weight like I use when I'm power fishing for largemouth with the big weights. So you're going to be using more of a 3/16 tungsten, something in that neighborhood. So a lot of times when you're finessing it, that like Colin's saying with the peg in it, that's a good technique to use. And when you have to retie it, if you do happen to break off and have to retie, it's a lot easier to retie it as well. But sometimes they just don't want the noise. You're going to have to do a little bit better if you don't have that noise in certain situations too. So, but yeah, that's a modified Carolina rig, and that works a lot of times as well. Yeah. Just depends on the situation you're fishing the Carolina rig in.
That's really interesting because there's so many different things you can do with the Carolina rig. You can fish it shallow, you can fish it deep, you can fish it with something like this, or you can fish it with the big nasties. I just like saying big nasties. That's why I throw that in there.
Well, I like
gotta say it right.
Yeah, the big nasty.
Emphasis,
the big nasty.
Big nasty.
But Jay, I like throwing it on, like putting a fluke on it, and like especially like if I got some hydrilla, I will put like a 4-foot leader or 5-foot leader and have a fluke on the back of it, and I'm popping it. And what it's doing is just coming up, and then it's dying down, coming through that grass and dying down. That's Norman and I, what was it, last year, Norman? We ended up, we got on a serious bite where that was the secret to where we were catching fish and nobody else was.
Yeah.
Wow. And you were talking about the walking the dog presentations. There is nothing more exciting than walking the dog red fishing.
That's something
a redfish come up and grab it, and a 20-pound fish come up and grab it, or you want to see a redfish come up upside down because their mouths are on the bottom of their body and grab a top water. You got this thing coming. There was a guy down here who I fished with. The guy never got in a boat, but he caught so many redfish and so many speckled trout, and he used there are puppies, there are spooks. And I swear this guy could make those things. I'm sure North can too. I swear this guy could make that thing go in a figure eight. He was that good. Yeah. I'm sure Norm can too. I'm just not that good with that.
I'm not either, Jay. But Norman, we've got video to where we were he was throwing a spook, and he had to hit a hole probably about the size of a basketball
at 300 feet.
He threw it in. Excuse me. And just outside of where it came out of because it had like overhang, and there was a hole where two trees kind of came together, and it was about the size of a basketball. And just right outside was probably about 20 foot of a downfall. And Norman was walking that thing right along that. I was like, if I would have tried to do that, I would have hung up in the tree somehow coming out of it. And then hung up on the downfall, and he just walks that thing like it. It's amazing.
Guys, bucket list. Get down to the coast. Louisiana is the best place in the world to fish redfish. Redfish you can fish them. If you're a bass fisherman, you can catch redfish. I promise you, because they eat the same thing. Some guys like using Texas rigged crawfish type stuff. Some guys like to walk the dog. I like to use, let's see if I have any redfish stuff. Oh, yeah. I have caught 20-pound redfish on this little thing right here.
Little shrimp.
That's tiny, man. That is tiny.
Yeah.
That's one thing that we're going to need to do one day, Colin, is go try to target some redfish. That's one thing I personally have not done is do the redfish thing. But that sounds like a blast.
And you know what? I have never fished Chickamauga or Nickajack, so let me get a boat in 2024, and we'll trade trips.
Yeah, well, you come up here, and we'll take you out, and then we'll make a trip down there, and you can kind of show us the deal. And so
mean, I got excited. Jeremy May just said hello, gentlemen.
Hey,
Hello,
Jeremy.
Jeremy May.
Hey, Jeremy,
Jeremy May from Vector Hooks, all the way from the great state of Georgia.
Yeah. So, we know old Jeremy. What was it? My buddy of mine, he goes down and fishes for reds, and last year he was catching them on an A rig.
Yeah, I would not want to fish for reds with an A rig. You get 3 reds on you just grab the tiger by his tail, buddy.
Yeah,
Because they're going to be going every which way, and
it came back mangled. I'll say that, Jay.
yeah, we didn't say it ended well.
No, no. So, but
In
yeah,
fact, I'm probably going to go Saturday. I'm going to go down, and this is the live baiting time of the year, so you're just going to kind of sit there and.
Yeah.
Oh no, Jeremy's actually from Virginia. Okay, see, I told you guys. Remember before this podcast, Colin, how do you pronounce your name? Even though it's an easy name, I want to get one thing right, and that's I'm going to pronounce your name correctly.
yeah.
So I apologize, Mr. May. Virginia.
Virginia. Yeah.
I'm just not very good with those Eastern things, you know.
They all kind of run together, don't they?
Well, also Jeremy May is originally from New Orleans, and I got that one right.
Yeah.
I'm terrible when it comes to names.
Miles away from my house.
I have such a bad memory when it comes to putting face with names. When I'm supposed to know, there's a lot of people that I meet one time, and I should know who they are again. Like, man, and the most embarrassing thing in the world is somebody coming up to talk to you, and you think you're supposed to know who they are, or they know who you are. They call you by name, and all you can say is, "Hey, how you doing, man? What's going on?" You're like, man.
Well, remember,
that's because you want to say, "Hey, how you doing, Jay?" Like, what is his name?
Remember, they have done one guide trip with you. You have done 1,000 guide trips with them.
Yeah.
I have done 1,000 podcasts with people. Sometimes I don't remember people I've had podcasts with. You know, that's horrible in my book. But I both guided and done podcasts, so I understand what Norman is explaining. I understand that completely.
Yeah. And that's what was fun. That's funny that Norman and I were just talking about it with Jen and Dustin Muse about like name wise, I'm horrible with names, but I could see you in 10 years and I can be like, I know that person. But I can recognize a face, but recognize or knowing a name is difficult from time to time.
And Jeremy just said that the Reds have been running really thick in Venice, Louisiana. Venice is like the end of the world. It's way down there at the very tip of Louisiana, and Louisiana just keeps going and going and going and going and going and going and going. Then all of a sudden it stops, and then there's nothing left but the Gulf. Well, that's Venice where it stops. And it's just a wonderful place to fish. They have a place called the Wagon Wheel where you can catch a 4-pound largemouth, and on your next cast, you catch one of these catfish that's like 3 feet long. Then the Reds come in. It's just an amazing place. But you don't want to go out in that Wagon Wheel unless you have a big boat, because it's where the Mississippi River meets the Gulf, and it just goes like this.
Yeah.
The fish come in there, and it just. I've never been there. I've only heard stories because, it's dangerous. And wow. He just reminded me. There's one guy who keeps promising to take me there, and I'm gonna be calling him tomorrow.
Yeah, you'll show up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yep. But also, man, I am going 2024. I'm gonna try to get up there and see you guys and fish some of these places I've heard so much about. Gosh, what is the heck? Palaniuk. Some of the most thrilling footage I've ever seen is Palaniuk catching that 9-pounder on Chickamauga.
Yeah. Well, see, this year on Chick, I've been fortunate to where I've got one 10-pounder on Chick and a couple of 8s and probably about 15, 16, 7-pounders. We've done pretty good.
And was all that Texas rigging, Colin?
No, the 10-pounder came off the Chattown lure, the micro jig. Um,
We talked about in last night's show. We showed them.
yeah. So this
Oh
is
yeah.
actually the bait that I caught it with. Typically, though, we have it with the McMinnow tied on it, but I had ran out, so I had to use a Z-Man.
Yeah, we were talking last night, Jay, also because we're talking about that micro jig. That, of course, we originally designed it for smallmouth, but we got into talking about, we catch largemouth I was talking about 5 or 6 pound largemouth on it that we've caught. And I'm glad you brought that up, Colin, because I actually forgot about the 10, but Colin did catch a 10 on that same bait we're talking about last night, the small micro jig.
Yeah. So, and which we done. I don't know if you want to get into this or not, but we have changed up our heads on it to where, like, we put a spring lock on it. We're the only ones that's got the micro jigs or the finesse jigs that's got a spring lock on it
To hold your trigger up
we've
there.
been able to put those on there.
That is awesome. That way no soft plastic gets away.
Yeah.
No, the plastic will tear up before that comes off.
I would rather plastic tear up than get away. Because we've all had it get away. You get a little bluegill come up there and grab it and hold on, and then I got a bite. Dude.
Yeah.
Short.
And
either gone
you
or
don't realize
ruined,
it, and you're fishing. You got the rest of that cast, which how we do a lot of drifts, Jay. I mean, we could have the bait where it could be 5 to 10 minutes in between casts that we have.
Okay, we have a question from the audience.
Yeah.
It says, this is Jeremy May again from Vector Hooks. He said, is there a gap for the skirt on those jig heads?
For which one?
The one with the keeper you just showed?
The new ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, we, let's see. Now, Jeremy, don't be taking our ideas now. But, yeah, what it is, like you can see, we are able to tie up like right into here to be able to make that skirt. And what it does, and the difference in between, hold on. This is our older one. You see how it's just got the regular bait keeper compared to, let's see, how can I'm trying to get both of them on here. You see how I can't see. Let's see.
Yeah, it's so hard with these things.
Yeah.
The camera's back.
So this one is your typical what everybody has, right?
Yes.
And so what we've done is put that spring lock on there, and what we've noticed is with having that spring lock on there and because we hand tie everything, that spring lock allows that skirt material to puff out a little.
Yeah, it'll help the skirt material fan out versus the old version without the spring lock. The skirt almost folded flat.
Yeah, you see how that's kind of flatter to where.
Yes.
And if
with that spring lock, it puffs out that skirt.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Go ahead.
We have another comment. Jeremy May said those would be great for small swim baits. I love here. I have it right here. This is the size of the swim bait I use down on the coast.
Yeah.
It's just a little thing, man. If I had a little jig like that,
yeah,
with a I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Like Jeremy said, when I get excited, this happens. But if I had something small like that with a coil with a spring on it, man, and that's one of the fantastic little rigs right there for speckled trout and redfish down on the coast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we've had our jigs fished in with like up in with the Bassmasters Elite, we've had guys with the Bassmasters Elite that we've had on our podcast that we've shipped them out to them just for them to go up north and fish with them. We've shipped them down to Louisiana.
You should ship some more of those down to Louisiana.
We can do it. But then we've also shipped some to the Everglades because a friend of ours, Neil Starks, is using our jigs to catch peacock bass.
Okay, now that we're talking about this, why don't you guys tell people if some guy's watching this and he's like, man, I want these jigs, I want these micro jigs, I want that jig head. How would they get a hold of you guys and say, hey, I want these?
You want to answer it, Norman? Or?
I can take that. Yeah, you message myself or Colin on Facebook Messenger, on personal messenger, via Facebook. And we will get back to you fairly promptly. We can get back our product list and the price list. If you feel comfortable enough to send us your phone number on your message, we'll call you. A lot of times it's easier to talk versus message back and forth. If not, if you message us, let you know, yeah, we're interested in some of your jigs, some of your stuff. What we'll do is we can get back with you, send you the product list, and we can send you our phone number, and then you can get back with us via phone at your convenience. But we should have a pretty good turnaround. Now, keep in mind too, everything is hand tied. They're all custom baits, and we make them on order. So we can basically make what colors you want. You just tell us what you want, size, colors, the whole 9 yards, and we will custom make them to whatever you want. So it's not like they're already made. We'll custom make them for whatever you're looking for.
Okay, we have another comment from Jeremy May, and he's just curious if you have experimented with bringing the spring lock down a little bit lower on the hook.
No. I mean, the thing is we did have it to where it was closer to the head. Here's the one I just painted today that I'm going to put green pumpkin on it, and I'm actually going to take this out here tomorrow and go smash some smallmouths with it on Nickajack. But we did bring it down, and it wasn't the reason why we brought that down, Jay, was because it was harder. We was not able to get the knot tight enough for when we're tying it, so we had to bring it down some because the skirt material was getting into it, and so it did not look right. We like things looking perfect, and so it wasn't appeasing to us to be able to say, hey, this is how we want it. So we did drop that down a little bit, just enough to where when we put the skirt material on and tie it, it is going to look good, and it does the job.
It has just enough room between the actual head and where the spring is on the hook itself that gives us enough room to actually be able to tie and wrap the thread to tie the skirt. You don't want it too close to the head because then you don't have room, and it just the job just doesn't look good. And like Colin was saying, it didn't
right. And that skirt's not tight on there.
Exactly.
Okay, we have time for one more comment from Jeremy May. Okay. And he said that he builds jigs.
Yeah.
And he said if the spring was a little bit lower, he would buy them by the thousand. So you might want to talk to him after the show. You guys said you know him, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked to him.
Yeah, why don't you guys talk, after the show? Jeremy, yeah. I know you're still listening.
If he just Jeremy, if you can just send us a message and we'll talk to you, brother.
That'd
probably be the easiest one.
That sounds like what I call a money message right there.
Yeah.
Well, guys, man, it's 50 after the hour. So I was having such a good time talking to you. Usually I try to end podcasts at 35. That's just my style. But I was having such a good time talking to you.
Oh, man, it's been a blast, Jay.
Thank you so much. We had a lot of audience participation. Thank you, Jeremy May, for all of your participation.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Why don't you guys tell us when we can talk? Jeez, you guys got me all flustered because I'm all excited to talk about redfish. And thinking about redfishing on Saturday. So, why don't you guys one more time tell us when a guy can tune in to Deck Talk Live?
All right. Next Thursday, we're on every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, next Thursday, we're actually going to take next Thursday off in celebration of Thanksgiving. And
I will too.
Again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody, all your viewers, Jay. Myself and Colin wish everybody happy Thanksgiving, but we are off next Thursday. But you can catch us back the following Thursday and every Thursday after that at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time weekly.
And Jeremy has one more. I guess he had to have the last laugh. He said, "Love you guys."
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Jeremy.
Jeremy, we appreciate it.
Okay,
sure.
Man, with that, guys, it's Thursday night. I've made my plans to go fishing. Have you? You know, I'm just telling ask that of all my viewers every single time because you guys know I say this every single podcast. You only get to do this once, so have fun.
That's it.
Guys, stick around. With that, I'm going to end the podcast. And I'd like to talk to you for 2 minutes afterwards. I'm as hungry as you guys are.